In the beginning, before time had taken its first breath and the stars had twinkled in the sky, there was only God. He existed in the vast, endless expanse, a realm untouched by creation, surrounded by silence and stillness. He was, and yet he was not alone. Within himself, he harbored the seeds of what would come to be: life, light, and the unfolding of all things. Yet in that perfect stillness, there was a need, a desire for companionship, for beings who could witness the beauty and majesty he would soon bring into being. God, in his infinite wisdom, pondered how to bring forth these companions. He would create creatures of unparalleled grace and boundless strength, but they would not be bound by time or matter. They would dwell in the realms beyond creation, in the spaces where the human eye could not see, yet they would be as real as any creature in the world he was about to shape. They would be beings of pure light, powerful and unblemished, without a will of their own but forever devoted to his purpose. He spoke, though no sound escaped his lips. From his mind, a thought formed, rippling outwards like the first wave across a vast ocean. The thought was like a spark, and from it arose beings made of the very essence of his will, angels. They were born of light and purpose, formless yet perfect in their initial creation, their ethereal wings stretched wide with the breath of divinity. Their forms were not of flesh and bone but of energy, light, and love, and they shimmered with the beauty of his will. Each angel was a reflection of God's thought, a spark of his infinite essence. They were sent forth to serve, to carry out his desires and carry the wisdom of his creation. They would be guardians of realms that existed only within his mind, emissaries of divine will, and singers of praises that echoed throughout the unseen cosmos. As the angels took shape, they felt the call of the Creator. They moved within the boundless spaces, their wings brushing against the airless void. Their existence was to be defined by their closeness to God's presence, ever in service, always around him, always ready to act upon his will. Their voices, though not heard by the ears of the world, resonated in a way that filled the entirety of creation with a song of devotion and harmony. Some of the angels began to look beyond themselves, contemplating the vastness of what was to come. The act of creation had begun, and soon the worlds would be born. The angels could sense the unfolding of the universe, but they remained as servants, ever faithful, awaiting the instructions from God. Each of them knew their role in the grand design, and yet, there was a yearning, an unspoken question about what lay beyond their purpose. Then, one among them, a bright and powerful angel, felt a stir within his essence. It was not a simple longing, but a deep curiosity, a desire to understand more than he had been shown. He wondered about the world God would create, and about what it meant to have free will. Could there be more to existence than service alone? Could there be a choice in how they served him? The question grew stronger within him, and though he tried to suppress it, the seed of doubt had been planted. This angel was not alone in his feelings. Others, too, began to wonder what it would be like to possess something beyond their role, beyond their devotion. What would it mean to be able to choose, to act out of their own will? As the light of God faded from their presence, the angels stood in silence, the weight of their decision hanging in the air like a heavy mist. Some felt the familiar pull of their divine purpose, the comforting certainty of a life devoted to serving the Creator. These angels, still faithful, looked at one another with quiet resolve, understanding that they were part of something larger, something greater than themselves. They bowed their heads, silently reaffirming their devotion, unwilling to step into the unknown. But others, led by Lorien, felt a strange stir in their hearts. The desire for freedom, for choice, for the ability to know themselves beyond mere service, had become a fire that could not be extinguished. They turned toward one another, eyes filled with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. They were about to embark on a path that would separate them from the Creator, forever altering the course of their existence. Lorien's voice broke the stillness. "We must go. We must discover what lies beyond our purpose. We cannot stay, not when there is so much more to learn, to experience." The angels who stood with him nodded, their wings shimmering with a light that now seemed dimmer, less pure. They were no longer the beings of perfect devotion they had once been. Something had shifted within them, something fundamental. As they moved toward the boundary of the realms where God's light no longer reached, a great darkness lay before them. It was not the absence of light, but a place of possibility, a place where the laws of creation could be bent and shaped by the will of the one who ventured there. And so, the angels, those who had chosen the path of rebellion, stepped into that void. The world that awaited them was one of great uncertainty, a world where the fabric of reality itself could be molded, and where their choices would be their own to make. Here, they could shape their future, not as instruments of divine will, but as free beings with the power to decide their own destinies. As they moved deeper into this new realm, they felt the full weight of their decision. The freedom they had so longed for was now before them, but it came at a cost. There was no longer the presence of the Creator to guide them, no longer the comfort of knowing their purpose. They were left with only themselves, each other, and the vast, untamed expanse of possibility. Days, or perhaps years, time had become fluid here, passed as they explored this realm. The angels began to take form in ways they never had before. Without the strict parameters of divine will to define them, they became something more complex. Some embraced the freedom and began to shape their forms into beings of great beauty and strength, while others wandered, lost in their own thoughts, questioning the choice they had made. Lorien, though still filled with the fire of his decision, could not help but feel a growing sense of unease. He had longed for this moment, but now that it had arrived, he found himself grappling with something he had not expected: loneliness. The absence of God's presence weighed heavily upon him, and he began to wonder whether the freedom he had sought was worth the price they had paid. Yet he could not turn back. There was no turning back now. The bond with the Creator had been severed, and though they had once been part of the divine light, they were now apart from it, standing at the edge of their own existence. It was in this moment, as Lorien stood on the precipice of this new reality, that he felt a tremor in the very air around him. A shift, like the turning of a great wheel, echoed through the void. He turned to the others, his heart racing. Something was happening. The silence that had once embraced them was now filled with a strange energy, a hum, as though the fabric of this realm was being disturbed. Suddenly, a voice rang out, a voice both familiar and alien, filled with power and sorrow. It was a voice that carried the weight of the cosmos, the kind of voice that could move mountains and shape the heavens. And yet, it was not the voice of God. Lorien, it called, echoing through the realm. Lorien, you have chosen to forsake the Creator's purpose. But know this: no being can ever fully sever the bond that was forged at the beginning of all things. You have walked away from the light, but darkness has its own price. Lorien froze, his wings stiffening at the sound of the voice. He knew immediately that this was not a warning from God, but something far darker. This voice carried with it a power that seemed to consume the very air, a force that was ancient and unknowable. It is not too late, the voice continued, softer now, but no less insistent. You need not face this alone. Return, and all will be forgiven. Lorien's heart clenched at the words. They were familiar, too familiar. This was not the voice of the Creator, but of something that had once been part of the divine plan, something that had been there in the beginning, watching, waiting. A being of great power, born from the same light that had created them all, but now twisted, bent by its own desires. The angels who had followed Lorien felt the tremor as well. Some of them stepped back, uncertain, their minds and hearts conflicted. They, too, could feel the pull of this strange power, the promise of something greater, or perhaps something darker, awaiting them. But Lorien, though shaken, held his ground. We made our choice, he said, his voice steady despite the fear that gnawed at him. We cannot go back, we must go forward. And so, they pressed on, unaware of the dark presence that had now set its sights on them, a presence that would test not only their resolve but the very foundations of the world they had chosen to enter. The angels continued to walk, deeper into the shadow of the unknown, not realizing that their journey had only just begun. For as they ventured farther from the light, they would come to learn that freedom was not without its dangers, and the cost of their rebellion was far greater than they had ever imagined. As the light of God faded from their presence, the angels stood in silence, the weight of their decision hanging in the air like a heavy mist. Some felt the familiar pull of their divine purpose, the comforting certainty of a life devoted to serving the Creator. These angels, still faithful, looked at one another with quiet resolve, understanding that they were part of something larger, something greater than themselves. They bowed their heads, silently reaffirming their devotion, unwilling to step into the unknown. But others, led by Lorien, felt a strange stir in their hearts. The desire for freedom, for choice, for the ability to know themselves beyond mere service, had become a fire that could not be extinguished. They turned toward one another, eyes filled with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. They were about to embark on a path that would separate them from the Creator, forever altering the course of their existence. The angels who had followed him, once filled with the fire of rebellion, now moved with a sense of dread. Their forms had changed since they had left the light. They were still angels, but they were different. Their features, once so pure, now seemed more fluid, more uncertain. Their wings were no longer the delicate and shimmering things of celestial beauty. Instead, they were tinged with shadow, as if the darkness had begun to seep into their very essence. Some of them began to hesitate, glancing back, as if they could sense the fading connection to the Creator. Their eyes, once filled with unshakable faith, now flickered with doubt. Lorien, one of them, a gentle angel named Seraphiel, spoke softly. "Do you feel it? The darkness. It's changing us. We're not the same. We're not what we were." Lorien turned to face Seraphiel, his expression unreadable. "We chose this," he said, his voice still firm but carrying the weight of an uncertainty that even he couldn't hide. "This is the path we must walk. We will find our purpose in this new realm, away from God's light." But even as he spoke, he could feel the darkness pressing in on him, a tangible weight that seemed to sap the strength from his wings. There was no denying it anymore. The price of their choice was becoming clear, and it was not just the loss of their connection to God. It was the gradual unraveling of everything they had once been. Suddenly, the air around them shifted again. The oppressive quiet that had filled the realm now vibrated with an ancient energy, and the shadows deepened, swirling like a storm ready to break. From the depths of the darkness, a figure emerged. It was not one of the Creator's angels, nor was it a being of light. It was a creature of shadow, its form shifting and changing with every passing moment, as though it were made of the very fabric of the void itself. The creature stepped forward, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light, filled with malice and ancient knowledge. Its voice echoed through the realm, a sound that seemed to reverberate in the bones of the angels. "So, the rebellion has come to pass," it said, its voice like the whispers of forgotten nightmares. "Lorien, you have broken the chain. But know this, the darkness has a price, one that no soul can escape." Lorien's wings stiffened. The creature's presence sent a chill through him, a coldness that seemed to reach into the very heart of his being. He knew, without a doubt, that this was no mere wanderer of the void. This was something older, something more dangerous. The dark being before them was a force born from the very unraveling of creation itself, a being that had existed before the light had even begun to take shape. "Who are you?" Lorien demanded, his voice steady, though his heart pounded in his chest. "I am one who was cast away, long before the world was made," the creature replied, its form shifting with an unsettling grace. "I was part of the light, once, just as you were. But like you, I was forgotten. And I have waited, in the shadows, for the day when others like you would come, willing to abandon the light." The angelic followers of Lorien shifted uneasily, their wings fluttering with growing discomfort. Some began to pull away, as if the very presence of this being was too much to bear. But Lorien, his resolve still firm, stepped forward. "We are not like you," he said defiantly. "We have chosen our path. We will not be bound by chains." The creature's eyes gleamed with a terrible knowing. "Ah, but you do not yet understand. You think that by leaving the Creator, you are free. But the freedom you seek is an illusion, a trap woven into the very fabric of this realm. I was once like you, one of the angels who sought to break free. But now I am something else. Something greater." Lorien could feel the weight of the creature's words sinking into his very being. The price of rebellion was becoming clearer by the second. The darkness that had once seemed so alluring now felt like a shackle, pulling at him in ways he hadn't anticipated. The creature before them was no longer just a being of shadow. It was a warning, a reflection of what they might become if they continued down this path. "You were an angel?" Seraphiel asked, her voice trembling. But you've become something else. Something monstrous." The creature laughed, a hollow, chilling sound that sent shivers down the spines of those who heard it. "Monstrous? No, I am simply what you will become if you do not turn back now. You are already changing, aren't you? The wings, the form, the very light within you is fading. In time, you will become like me, creatures of shadow and chaos, no longer bound by purpose, but slaves to the void." Lorien's heart thudded painfully in his chest. The words cut deeper than he cared to admit. The rebellion had been so simple, so pure in its inception. They had wanted freedom, a choice, a life beyond servitude. But now, standing face to face with the consequences, Lorien wondered if they had chosen wrong. But the path forward was set. There was no going back now. "We will not return," Lorien said, his voice hardening. "We have made our choice. And we will see it through." The creature's smile was cold and knowing. "Very well, then. You will see, soon enough, what the true cost of freedom is. And when you do, there will be no turning back. You will be forever bound to this place, a slave to the darkness, as I am." With those words, the creature vanished into the shadows, leaving the angels to face the stark reality of what their rebellion had unleashed. The realm around them grew colder, darker. And in that moment, Lorien realized that the darkness was not just a place, it was a force that could corrupt and consume. And though they had once longed for freedom, they now stood on the edge of something far more terrifying: the unraveling of their very essence. The journey had only just begun, and already, they were beginning to lose themselves. As the darkness enveloped them, the angels could feel the pull of the void growing stronger, a tangible force that threatened to consume everything they had once been. Lorien's wings beat against the growing weight of the shadows, but no matter how hard he tried to push forward, he could feel himself being drawn into the depths of the unknown. The rebellion had cost them more than they had ever imagined. The once bright, crystalline forms of the angels now shimmered faintly, their beauty slowly fading into something unrecognizable. Their wings, once vast and brilliant, had become tattered and darker, echoing the very shadows that surrounded them. Even Lorien, the leader, who had once felt so sure of his purpose, now stood at the precipice of a transformation he could not control. And yet, even as the shadows pressed in, a strange feeling arose within Lorien's heart, something akin to doubt, yet not quite regret. Was this truly the freedom they had sought? Was this what lay on the other side of their rebellion? The creatures of darkness had promised them power, but at what cost? The more they ventured into this unknown realm, the more they began to realize that freedom came with a price far steeper than they had ever thought. The others, those who had followed Lorien, began to falter. Some of them whispered among themselves, their once clear conviction fading into the haze of confusion and fear. Others, unable to bear the burden of their decision, looked back toward the light they had left behind, their longing for the Creator stirring deep within their hearts. But Lorien, though shaken, stood tall, refusing to acknowledge the doubt creeping into his mind. "We chose this," he said, his voice growing hoarse as the darkness seemed to close in. "We cannot turn back now. We must face what we've done." And so, the angels pressed on, not knowing what awaited them at the end of their journey. Would they become creatures of shadow, twisted and consumed by their own rebellion? Or was there still a chance for redemption, for a way to reclaim what they had lost? The answer lay just beyond the horizon of the unknown, a place where only the brave, the broken, and the lost could ever venture. As the angels continued their journey, one thing was certain. Their story, though far from over, was one of sacrifice, of choices made and paths taken, and of the eternal struggle between light and darkness. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel for more stories of rebellion, redemption, and the unknown. Let us know in the comments what you think will happen to Lorien and his followers next. Will they find a way back to the light, or will they remain lost in the shadows forever? Until next time, keep your wings strong and your heart even stronger.